Brandon, my friend, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm grateful to know you and grateful to be a part of this research that you're doing.
I invited you to this whole event because the interview series is inspired by a crowdfunding campaign that we're doing for a short film that my friend Jane wrote, and her experience with her family was a bit rocky, but the whole heart for the film is her absolute deep love for her family, for her child, her passion for becoming a mother. And she did have a quite rocky road to actually realize that dream. So I'm collecting personal stories from people who have had different experiences with their own parents, with their own children. And your story for me, and I mentioned it to Jane in her interview, your story for me is a huge healing experience because I myself did not have a good experience with my parents. So every single time I hear someone who had a different upbringing from mine, and to see how they are living their lives with that experience and how they having those relationships still in their lives, it is a huge healing experience and inspiration for me. So,
Okay. Well, I hope if that is truly how you feel, then I'm happy to share because I can't help but empathize. And I just want to say again that yeah, I think I think that everyone deserves to have loving, kind parents, and I think it's super understated that there is no more important of a job on this planet, I think, than being good parents, because you can look at all the other contributions you can make, but at the end of the day, if you're creating a person that's going to survive you, you would want to give them the best toolkit, the most love and affection, the most positivity you could, such that they could continue and to perpetuate that with the future, circles that they enter into. So I have I'm incredibly inspired by your story. So hopefully this can be reciprocal, because for someone to be able to be bigger than maybe some trauma and the family that they come from, and to want to still be a positive influence in the world, I think is more inspiring than what I have to share. But anyway, let's go for it.
then we will just mutually inspire each other.
Okay, sounds good.
Good. So, first off, let me just ask you, if you look back at your childhood, if you think about your upbringing, how do you feel about your parents? How do you feel about your relationship with your parents?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think what's fascinating to me is when we're kids, we all assume that everybody has the same experience, whether you're in a good situation or a bad situation. I think all kids kind of think this is what it's like growing up in a family. Aside from those little times when you're at a sleepover at a friend's house, and you go, oh, this kid gets to eat this kind of food and I don't get to, and so you come home, being a brat, and you say, oh, well, they get to do this, and the kind of cliche line is like, well, we're not them, and go live with them if you want. I don't know. That's a bad example, but in general, I think I had a very peaceful childhood without any extra stresses thrust on me, without any burdens put on me, certainly without any abuse, really, of any kind. Other than, some spankings for misbehaving, which, a little bit of, put in the corner, all of the, I think, disciplinary actions that you should do to not let your kid be a monster, like, just wreak havoc and just do whatever they want. And it wasn't excessive or anything. So it was a very healthy relationship where I felt treated like a person, and I could have a dialogue, and there was a sense of humor about things. And it's funny too, because when you look back, when you're just getting out of the house, you think, oh, there's some things I would do differently. better. But then as you get older and older, I was telling you this a bit yesterday, I just continue to gain more appreciation as I hear other people's stories for the fact that my parents didn't push me too hard in any direction. Because I think you can, without meaning to, you can also make your child get further away from who they were meant to be and what they are gonna align with if you try to push anything on them. And even though I had thought I want to push something on my child, like I said, being great, I don't want to do that anymore. I think there's nothing you should ask of a child other than to just be themselves and to try and communicate and express themselves and to let them know that you're there for them whenever they need.
That sounds absolutely lovely. And it is different from a lot of people's experience, especially in different cultures.
Sure.
How is your relationship with your parents now? What role do they play in your life now?
Yeah, so I mean, they'll always be my parents, and I mean, it's nice to sort of mature to the point where I consider them, friends, I guess, as weird, lame as that sounds or whatever. But they're still there to offer advice. And my mom especially, is willing to almost baby you if you need that, which is not necessarily the best thing, but I think it empowers us as kids to try and be mature enough to say, actually, you know what, thank you, but I don't need that anymore. But that's very sweet. My mom will say the line, "You'll always be my baby," kind of thing. To me, you're always my child, like my baby. Which again, and she's helped us out in the past. But if I were to lean on her too much, that would start to feel like I'm taking advantage. But another thing she always says is you can always come home. We would never want you. I mean, again, extreme situation. We would never want you out on the street. Like, you never need to turn to anyone. You don't need to turn to drugs or any of that stuff. Like, you can always come home. We'll help you out. And again, it's not that I'm proud to say I haven't done that. But my sisters did. Like, they went back for a little while, and it's not nothing against them. I think I would do that if I felt I needed to. I totally would. I wouldn't be ashamed of that. It's more that knowing that I had that safety net, which again sounds like, I don't want to be insensitive because I know a lot of people don't have that or don't feel that they want to go home. But to know that I could if I needed to is a relief. It's a long answer, but the last thing I'll say is my dad, on the other hand, he was sort of always the life lecturer. And, he anytime we get together, he'd take the opportunity to dispense some life information. And for a while, when I had first moved out, it got to be quote unquote annoying. And then to be honest, in the past 10 years, I've started to miss it because I think he feels that we're adults and we are, and we're, he's not going to help us out with everything anymore. And he's the more pragmatic one who realizes I can't baby these kids like any further. So now, if we do a project, it's a very mutual project. If we're going to go in on something, it's two adults doing something. It's not like him doing any favors or like, he doesn't believe in financially getting you out of a problem. Whereas my mom might bend the rules a little bit if so I think that balance, I'm very blessed that balance has taught me how to manage my money and how to manage my my expenses. And so I would call them friends and advisors.
That's so lovely. You have 3 sisters, if I remember correctly?
Actually, just two. Yeah.
But
they're both younger, yeah.
How is the family consensus? Because sometimes kids growing up in the same household can have a very different experience. Do they feel the same way? Do they have as good of a relationship with their parents as you do?
I think they feel the same way. My parents are like unbelievably good at not picking any favorites and making sure that all 3 of us feel equally, considered and cared for. I think it's very much one of these nuclear families of a dynamic of like, I'm the oldest child. Jackie is the middle child who has that sort of middle child drive to be equal with me or better, or to rebel. And then the baby, Brittany, is sort of the coddled one who's sweet and goes with the flow more. So we each play those roles I think we fit those roles quite well. And we each had our own hurdles to overcome with that growing up. And we each had different relationships with our parents throughout the journey. But I'd like to say that now it's settling very nicely as we're all adults, in that, me and my middle sister don't need to fight, anymore. We used to fight like cats and dogs, and it toughened us both up. And Brittany doesn't need, the youngest doesn't need to always take the easy road. She's now making some tougher life decisions, thinking independently for herself. So I think there's always a danger of getting stuck into those roles, but I think it's balanced out nicely now. And they've helped us to not play those cards, except for just a bit anecdotally, like kind of just jokingly,
Sounds good. If you could take something from the parenting style, how you were raised, what would you take and what would you leave? What would you implement in your life and what would you just leave behind?
I mean, so the things to take are certainly the work-life balance. Both my parents worked a lot of the time, but my mom did take some times off, during when kids were being born and at certain points when it just was appropriate. But she had her career that she kept returning back to. They're both engineers. They're both retired now. I think the fact they're both engineers allowed them to create a well-oiled machine of a household where they split the duties. That was another thing is, I was fortunate to see progress in the form of, a man and a woman splitting household responsibilities, not really getting into huge fights or arguments, which I think is a pretty big thing. And it's sad when kids see that, because that's what you model your experience off of. And again, jokingly, I told you I've become like the sort of relationship counselor for my parents as well. I mean, whether they want it or not, because I'm a pure believer in romance, and I think, like other species, I think we can couple for life, and I would love my parents to stay together for the rest of their life, and I think they worked hard to do that, and I see them in retirement bickering, and I try to tell them that how much I love them and how much I want this family to stay together, because so many families break apart for different reasons. And I think it's a lot of times people, especially kids, like when you're young, it's like me, why aren't you doing this? And then you finally get old enough to realize, like, holy shit, it was all for us. So now I have to give back. And so I would just try to replicate that model where my kids can see a functioning couple, a healthy couple, a communicating couple that don't explode at each other. They're going to have disagreements. They're going to be honest with each other, like we revealed in the constellation. We're going to talk and express our feelings and not try to hide that. But I guess some things I would change are really just little things at this point. Like I did grow up in a bit of a strict household, and that led me to learn some things in ways that society and kind of other young men taught me. And I think that has been a bit of a detriment to me, because my parents had good intentions about being a bit pure about things, but then when you discover it secretly, quote unquote, you then have your own little fascinations and taboos and perversions, that because you think you're being naughty, and there's a certain feeling of feels good to be naughty, like because you grew up in a household of sort of not being bad, and that development of my shadow, luckily I've been able to recognize as an adult. But I don't see why kids at the right age, appropriate ages, shouldn't be taught and discussed, things like sex or things like maturity. And again, I think it was still fine, but there were some things in my youth that I got grounded for, right? You've heard, what grounding is, right? Like, that just for, I'm not gonna say I was blameless. Like, that was one way of dealing with it. And it was an opportunity for my parents, my father, namely, to explain to me why certain things were wrong. And it stuck with me, I'll just go into it. Like, if you're a young boy, you get caught with pornographic material, how do you handle that? So my dad grounded me and took it away. And the most valuable thing is he said, listen, son, you just need to realize that some women don't appreciate what you're seeing in this video. They don't want to be treated that way. And it's stupidly obvious, but that, to the kid, you need to hear that. So I think he could have just maybe approached that before it became like a punishment. It could have been a teaching. It still was a learning opportunity. So I want to. My wife grew up in a family where she was watching any and every movie that the parents were watching, and there were very raw things. She grew up going to nude beaches with her parents, and she's the other way. She chose the path of more innocent purity, and she didn't want to be on the nude beaches, but she was exposed to these real life things, the body, the human body, and so I think she has a much healthier relationship with her body than I did, and it's thanks to her that I've become able as an adult to mature and get past my childhood, kind of a feeling of shame about all that. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but I would try to change that, I think.
That's so cool. And I'm very happy that you're bringing in topics like this, because some people to this day feel very uncomfortable talking about the body and sexuality. And, I'm a huge fan of these topics. So thank you for bringing that in. On the topic of your own children, how do you feel about becoming a parent?
Well, yeah, I've always known I wanted to become a parent. And I don't think it's any coincidence that when you have very good parents, you feel like you want to do that, because you've seen it work, and you think, family's so important to them, and it's a value that's been instilled in me. And so more and more, the older I get, the more I don't want to say I'm getting desperate to have a kid, but the more I really, really, instead of just liking the idea of it, I am starting to physically become really really emotional about wanting to bring someone into this world, and I think my wife actually says it better, because she said, like, we're to the point in our relationship where we're overflowing, we're spilling over with love for each other, and it's great, we're affectionate. So I think we have enough in our cups to fill another cup, to pour some of that love onto another being that we've created a lot together on paper, but to create something flesh and animate with a spirit and a soul, and to pour love into that, unconditionally, I think that would bring a lot of joy, and I welcome that as a life experience, because I'm starting to get a bit into the routine monotony. What's it all for? Everybody's got their own answer for that. And so the 9 to 5, and then just coming back to watch TV, is that what we worked for? All this to get stable for that? That's like the American dream. It's not our dream. So yeah, I think this is a shared dream, and does that answer your question? We'd like to impart those values, of family and togetherness onto a new member of the family. That would be a child first, and hopefully a friend as a close second.
Yeah, I love that. Funny enough, there's still this it's not a stigma, it's just a bias that when we think about parenting and when we think about the parent-child relationship, the first thought is always towards the mother. So what does fatherhood mean to you, and what does it mean for you to be a father or to become a father?
Well, that's a cool question, and I definitely have a lot to learn. So I think there's so much ahead of me that I'm going to realize. I think it's almost naive to answer it, but I'll attempt to right now. I mean, I think first and foremost, my only framework for this is to support my wife as the mother in the first instance, is to just try and make sure that she feels like she has everything she needs, because the process begins with her getting pregnant, hopefully. And there's that expression that the woman becomes a mother once they're pregnant and the man becomes a father once the baby's born. I mean, I want to try and defy that a little bit, and and be present there with baby as it's being created. But I think I'm just trying to work on myself, because I have had a short temper in the past. I'm impulsive. I say what I feel. And like, especially around my family and loved ones, I allow myself to have outbursts, but I actually don't want to necessarily perpetuate that as to my child. Like, I think it's really unique when you find the right partner, because it's kind of funny and amusing, but like Cece and I, my wife, we've started mimicking each other. I think that's a sign of a good relationship, because we actually believe the other person has good points. So in future arguments, we use the same points that they made. And then it's kind of like, you can't refute that. You can't argue that. And actually, it helps us to nullify our own arguments in the future. And so having seen my own wife have outbursts that I think maybe I taught her to do, and she's taught me to do things, it gives you that little glimpse into like, this child is going to mirror everything you do. And so the image of the child I want to raise and the person that I am are not fully aligned yet. And so I've been trying to get closer and closer to modeling, leading by example. And one of the things I do get from my parents is this outbursty thing. My dad would like sigh and sigh and sigh and sigh. And then eventually, every once in a while, he would have a little, like, I just wouldn't stop. He says I'm like a dog with a bone. I just kept asking, gnawing at his leg. And finally, he's got to bark at the guy. Just, no, enough. It's not happening, And when that happens, a child, we feel a little kicked, like a little puppy, and we close off and we give up. And he would feel bad and he would apologize. And so it was all fine. And those are the worst. That was like the worst that would happen. And my mom would be tenacious and stubborn. And so, she's got, conviction about things. So these are actually survival traits. Honestly, I don't regret having them. And I want my child to have them in one way, shape, or form. But I guess I don't want to be ill prepared and outburst and do things I can't take back, and have my kid all of a sudden think it's all right to just fly off the handle and swear and, blow up at mom or dad and just think that that's okay. I've lost track of the question, but I think a father, a man, especially in this, modern day society, has a responsibility to not, it's like I said on our film sets, to not be the louder person, to not be the angrier person, to not be I am usually the biggest person around, like, with a few exceptions. And so it's the easy path for me to be the aggressive one. So I want to be more disciplined and if I can show that my example is to actually be more of a listener and more gentle and affectionate and kind, I think that's a better example to set. And I think that's what we need out of our fathers today.
Definitely. You mentioned that the image of the child that you would like to raise and the image that you are right now don't perfectly align. What would that be, that image of a child that you would like to raise?
Well, that's a cool question too, because you see kids, when you're trying to have a kid, you see more and more, you notice more and more children around. Like, I don't know if they were there all along, but I just see them everywhere now. And let's just talk about the typical kids. Like, okay, we've all been on an airplane and the baby's like just crying, wailing. And, I don't think I'm a horrible person to just go like, I wish that kid would just shut up. You start blaming the parents. Another good lesson that my dad taught me, we were on a flight, that was happening. And, he just said, that's going to be you one day, son. Like, you're going to be that parent with the crying kid. And again, it gives you a little empathy. It puts some perspective on it. And, you just put on the noise canceling headphones and you tune it out. And you try to feel bad for the parents instead of being just angry at them, because they don't need that energy. That being said, he sees my wife, she says, well, there's certain ages that kids, you should try not to travel with kids because it's really upsetting for them. That's true. And also, I just feel that it takes a lot of patience to be gentle with babies. And if you're impatient, they sense that, and they sense that their crying gives a reaction that is somehow primordial, and you're giving them attention, and they're going to keep crying. So that might be naive to say. Like, maybe I've heard that some babies are criers and some babies aren't. That's it. Like, so I don't want to say that I want a kid that doesn't cry, or I don't want to say that I want a little sweet, shy kid, because yeah, they're so sweet and cute and they sit there nervous, but then maybe they never develop that confidence. So I guess I don't necessarily want a kid on either extreme. I don't want a kid that's just cannot sit still and is just running around banging pots, screaming at all hours of the day. And I don't want a kid that's like so quiet and like reserved that they never want to interact with the world and they never want to move and they just sit still. But you get what you get. So I would love any child on across that spectrum, even in the extremes. But I think it's half nurture and half nature. So I think your child is born and that's who they are, and then they're gonna model after the environment that you create for them. So I would the image I would see of our child would be hopefully one that's mild-mannered, has fun, can get excited, but can also rein it in when it's not appropriate. I don't know. That sounds like I'm trying to create a cookie-cutter kid here. I don't think it works that way, so I can't really answer it further than that.
But I also think it's well-rounded. That's how we kind of end up in society later in life, that we adjust. Some of us have a bit more extreme personalities, but all in all, we all have to make it on the job market. We all have to fit in to a certain extent into society, and the extremes can feel ostracized. So it's a normal desire from a parent for your child to be able to fit in. You did mention modeling. So a bit later in life, because that's the first few years, but a bit later in life, what behavior would you like to model for your child?
Or what do you say later in life? Sorry.
So say a couple of years down the line, because in the beginning, it's only the two of you who would have a huge influence. But then you mentioned the environment. So later on, when they start to engage with the environment, what kind of environment would you like to create, or
totally
this is in the world?
This is going to be the biggest challenge, and we were talking a bit about this in a much broader sense, but the world still has a very factory mindset about it, mass producing, churning, no child left behind, quote unquote, which sounds great, but then by leaving no child behind, people are slipping through the cracks. They're getting through without any proper skills or education fit for the world. So, okay, the things that we would ideally love to create for our child are, one, a connection with nature. So there's these nature schools that we're looking into where half of the lessons take place like this, outside. I mean, I'm in a garden, it's not that great, but in nature. And I think that just fostering that sense of, I like to be in nature, I like to be outside, I think that's missing a lot today. The second thing, and it goes along with this, is the absence of technology, which we were talking about. We are not going to be the parents who just plop our kids in front of an iPad or the TV. I really hate that. I mean, I don't want to sound old here about, it's rotting their brains, but it's pacification, right? Like we said, and fine, like a classic pacifier is fine, like the one that they suck on. It's the teat. It's sort of a placebo, but when you get to the mind and you're actually, I'm not gonna say you're intentionally brainwashing them, but like you are closing off their imagination by feeding them a stream of continual product that is created by adults ultimately. And I mean, I've seen some of them. I don't think they're very impressive. I think kids' imaginations are way more impressive. So we wouldn't be giving them a phone other than to maybe when they're at the age where we want to make sure they're safe and that they can contact us. And we would be limiting screen time kind of stuff and making it a special opportunity to maybe sit down and watch a movie together or something. I think I want to continue what my parents did, which is really respectable, trying to have dinner together every night, sit down and have dinner together with the family, talk about the day. I think that gets lost a lot. Not have the TV on while you're eating dinner. That is not togetherness. And then my parents were incredibly good about getting us into sports. I think sport is huge. Whatever it is, any form of sport or physical activity, so many people today have this bad association with exercise. Like, that's not for me. I don't like that. You don't like it. It's essential to your health and well-being. So you have to do that from a young age. I don't think kids should have a choice to be physically active. I think that's I think it is black and white. Like, I mean, unless there's some health thing holding them back, you shouldn't force it on them, but there should always be an ample amount of opportunities to do physical activity. Diet should be regulated. Kids will eat what they are given, and yes, like, can give them a little treat. I'm sounding like a pet owner here, but my point is, like, I had a rabbit and I fed it nothing but organic greens, and like that rabbit loved it. Like, never needed to question, oh, there's sugary products out there. And then that's what forms their body and their health, and avoids them getting things like acne, which is just going to give them more stress anyway. This is like a long answer, but also ideally, I think it would be beautiful to have a dialogue with your child where they feel like they can come to you with anything, and there's never this like, oh, that's a bad thought you're having, like, you shouldn't be thinking that. Like, okay, that's okay. Well, that's morbid, or that's scary what you just said, but it's probably coming from an interesting place. Okay, that be channeled into something creative. We don't want to hurt little animals and insects. Like, maybe, it's okay, you're playing around, but they're, explain to them. They're trying to live their life, whatever. All right, I'm just rambling now. Is that enough? Is that sufficient?
But it's a good answer, though. I especially love the nature part because I grew up it was a city, but it was a tiny city. In about 15, 20 minutes, I could walk from one end of the city to the other end of the city, and it had parks, but it wasn't specifically close to any wild nature. So I didn't grow up in nature. I grew up in kind of a concrete, it wasn't a jungle, but it was concrete all around.
Yeah.
So I didn't grow up with that relationship with nature. It was something that I had to like reestablish later in life and rediscover that I actually like nature.
A bit for me too. I've always been in like suburban or urban environments. My dad grew up on a farm, so when I get back to visit, I get a glimpse of his childhood. And my wife grew up in a rural area, so we always want what we didn't get. And if you go and explore it, little by little, you do realize there's something beautiful about this, and you want to pass that on, I think, to the next generation. Yeah, cool. I agree with you.
You mentioned imagination. How was your imagination when you were a child?
I mean, I think I've got a pretty solid imagination, for better and worse, because the more vivid your imagination, the easier you can fall into, like we said earlier, dreams the other day, getting fascinated with, let's not say fake worlds, but pretend worlds or alternate existences, there's this idea of daydreaming, your head in the clouds, which is not a terrible thing for an artist, but if all you do is stay in that daydream, you're essentially unplugged. You're not much better than somebody who's, you know, somehow inebriated on a substance and just sort of escaping. So I did that for a while. I think I didn't like getting up in the morning. I didn't like it. I preferred to stay in bed. Not like depressed. I just like, it's like the Beatles song. Like, I was just, don't wake me. I'm just in the dream, and it's better than my life. And then slowly I realized, like, that's kind of sad. Like, I don't want my dreams to be better than my life. Like, surely they always can be, because dreams and imagination are powerful, but there's the dark side to that. So I tried to start and be selective with allowing myself to imagine things only for a limited amount of time before I felt that I needed to go and do it and be the doer. So I think if you have a healthy balance of dreaming and doing, then you're good. But if you allow yourself to indulge too much in the dreaming, then eventually that's just going to depress you, because a dream is not what's real, and only you can see it. And I think that can be related parallel to other things. If something in life is only for you, it's like the line from Into the Wild. It's not like, happiness is maybe not even real unless it's shared, you know? And I had some friends, ex-friends, who, when we were hanging out or perhaps experimenting, they would just go inward and they'd have a great time by themselves in their own minds. And I kind of would want to say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's do something. Let's manifest something. No, man, I'm in my own place right now. And I thought, that's kind of sad. Like, well, I'll see you later. You don't need me. I want to be a part of a collective. I want to be a part of the species and influence the world and the people around me. So imagination is good, but a healthy dose of it, partnered with an equal dose of doing, or if not more. I think I'm trying to get to the point where I'm doing even more doing than imagining now.
This is going to be a bit of an odd question, but
All
you
right.
did mention that you want to be part of a collective, and it just clicked in that, what do you think the collective imagination of this planet is right now? As a species, where is our imagination leading us?
Well, I mean, again, what comes right to mind is what we were also previously discussing. I mean, I know obviously AI is such a hot topic right now, so I think there's a big danger that we're sort of willing, a lot of us are willing to put our imagination in the hands of artificial intelligence, which sure, maybe was originally conceived of by us, but is very quickly getting to the point where it will come up with its own ideas. I mean, what are we other than just an evolved species that has just learned through the generations, like things from the past, you know? So we're just a collection of ideas from our, standing on the shoulders of our previous generations. So I think that's not, I think we agree that that's not really the right direction. It's kind of the easy route, even though it's been incredibly impressive and hard to create this technology. We're now reaching a point where we are handing over our consciousnesses without realizing it. And I don't want to get too out there here, but I think that there are still people who believe collectively that there can be a bigger movement towards unity and back towards humanity, nature, the universe, where we are looking out for each other, and we are not trying to think which race, culture, nation can become the most advanced the most quickly. We're actually trying to go and make sure that all of us are having the same experience, which is one of wellness and actually surviving together. I think we are really backwards in individuals getting to decide for us all what our imagination is supposed to be, whether it's whether it's, again, Bezos or Musk trying to get us up in space and whatever that agenda is about, it's exciting and it's hugely distracting, and it doesn't leave room for more humble yet much more civilized and kind of, I think, important goals of just trying to level the playing field. Like we're at a point where all of humanity should be unified. There shouldn't be war. Okay, again, I'm sounding idealistic. There shouldn't be poverty and famine, and we have the means to do that. But the people in power have let it go to their heads, right? And ultimate power corrupts ultimately or absolutely. And it's hard for us to have a perspective on what that would even feel like. So, so it's up to us to try and change things. I think that the larger group of people need to change things, not the few people, because the few at the top and the even more, much more few at the bottom, they won't change things. The ones at the top won't, and the ones at the bottom can't. So it's up to the majority, in the meaty middle, that I think to come together and to have a collective imagination. I gotta shut up now. Sorry.
Oh, I love it. That's the whole point. So say if we could, with the next generation, cause some meaningful tectonic shifts, what's the one thing that you would teach to every parent on the planet?
This would almost be best in like a bullet point form. So like first thing, and I'll try to summarize it quickly. First thing would be, it's kind of counterintuitive. Don't become a parent if you're not willing to take on the full responsibility. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect, but I think there's just so many children born, and again, I only know partial bits from people's stories, but like, if you have good intentions and you want to bring a child in with love, that is enough. It is, but you have to be willing to. It's a lifetime commitment. It's like they say with, again, it's weird to compare it to pets, but it's like a dog's just not for Christmas. Like a kid's just not for having a baby. It's a lifetime job. And I say it again, there's no more important job. Not the president of any country, no one comes close to the job of a mother and hopefully a father who is there supporting equally. Those roles, if everybody just did that one job right, the next generation would be fine. But of course, that doesn't happen. Some people are struggling to have kids that hopefully want and would be good parents, and others are having kids without any problem and they don't even want them, and that's heartbreaking. So we have this imbalance. So number one is just we have the technology to avoid having a child if you don't want to have a child, and you don't have to really alter your life too much. Just be smart about it. The second thing, so once you've made that conscious decision, the second thing to teach your kids is that the failure to our generation is to say to your kids that you are special, you are the one, you are great, you are better than everyone else. I think that's bullshit. I think it's good intentioned, make your kid feel good about themselves, but it's unnecessary. Now the other extreme is maybe not great either. Like, okay, you're just a cog in the system, fall in line, don't talk out of turn, don't have creative ideas. So I think a middle path of saying, you are unique, you are your own person, no one is like you in this whole world, but you're better than no one, and you're worse than no one. We're all in this together. So that whole collective idea of we have work to do, we have the planet to save, we have poverty to, my mom taught me some great little simple lessons. I'm a little kid, I'm going to the bathroom, I'm making a mess, I'm a little kid. And what does she say to me? She says, Brandon, you need to clean that up. I say, like, what? Why? Well, she says it really simply. so if you don't clean it up, somebody else's mother has to come in and clean up your mess. Like, she cleaned it up for me because she's my mom when I was like a little kid. But she says, well, it's going to be someone else's mother. So then I start thinking, it's a simple lesson. Okay, I shouldn't leave a mess. I shouldn't make a mess. I shouldn't leave trash because somebody else has to clean it up for me. Nobody else is my mother, and nobody else should have to be my mother, and she shouldn't even have to do it. So I always clean up my mess. My dad taught me not to litter. Same thing. Just leave a place like you found it. He calls it the camper's creed. So these little tiny gestures, if every kid is taught this, then your footprint, both carbon footprint and your emotional impact, like, it's the golden rule. It's stupidly obvious. Treat others how you wish to be treated. I think that I'll end it on that. That's the lesson. If every kid gets that, what's going to go wrong? You have to be taught it over and over again. But if they get it and they have a few learnings along the way, okay, this kid made me cry. I'm not going to make them cry because I wouldn't like that. And then, okay, I'm bigger than that. And then the other kid realizes, oh, wow, they had the chance and they're not going to bully me. Okay, last thing, sorry, because I've been starting to play basketball again. And it goes back to sports. I've learned so many lessons on the basketball court. So I think you can only teach, so much in your lessons, on paper, verbally. The other lessons need to come through experience. So you need to give your children opportunities to go out and learn for themselves in a safe environment. But some of the bravest moments in my life are when somebody's challenging me on the court and I find out what I'm made of, and I'm staring them eye to eye, and I'm standing my ground. And you know what's crazy is that the people that you play with, if you back down and go, oh, okay, actually they respect you less, and then they start to pick on you more. But when you're staring them eye to eye, and fight's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. I'm not gonna start it, but I'm at this point, I've been good, I've been honest. I'm gonna stand my ground, and then they respect you more, and you get toughened by that. And we still need some toughness in this life. Kids are a little too coddled sometimes, this generation, and every chance they get, they will take the soft route. And the world is still a bit tough, and we're not at the point where everyone can be soft. We still need some backbones, and we still need a thick skin to be able to self-heal, so that you can go back. And I've had some nights where I've cried because I felt like I failed. I cried, but you know what? I said, it's okay. I'm okay crying. I'm going to be tough. Nobody saw me cry. Now I'm comfortable, and you're comfortable seeing us cry. But when I was young, I was a little ashamed, but it was okay. I said, I can heal. That felt good to cry. And now, next day, I'm back at it. I did something that was brave and I failed, but it's okay. That self-healing process is very crucial for any human to have within themselves. And I think you're an amazing example of that. Anyway, sorry.
Funny enough, I never got that tough love. My parents were quite lenient on a couple of things as well, and they were leaning into neglectful in many ways. But
sorry to hear that.
It was a tough. Thank you. It was a tough lesson for me to learn as well. That especially as a woman, it's hard to say that thick skin is a positive thing because we're wired a little bit differently. But as a man, especially, it does command respect if you stand your ground and if you're firm in your choices and if you don't let yourself be pushed around. And there's obviously a feminine version of that, where we are still quite, whoever likes to be in their feminine, we're quite reluctant to say that we have a thick skin because we value sensitivity and our emotional abilities. But there is a version of tough love, this self-healing and resiliency, that is crucial for women and men. And it was something that I needed to learn way into my late 20s. And that was way too late. The damage was done by that point, just feeling like I'm pushed around in life and feeling like I'm not good enough.
That's a shame. That's not fair, I think, for anyone to have to feel. And I'm very glad that you still in some ways I think I'm also like a bit of a late bloomer in other things, but all that matters is that you are able to find yourself and your strength. But I feel like you were perhaps disserviced in that way, and you should have been taught those skills. And just to clarify, because I think there is a very big gender thing that must be considered that I can only empathize with as a man, but I want to clarify that things I learn on the court enable me a safe boundary to express these things, such that I don't need to be that way in normal, everyday interaction. So I hope you witness me on film sets, and actually, maybe I didn't stand my ground enough, but I don't raise my voice. I don't challenge people because I'm confident that I can if I need to. So I think that's part of it. I see people on the court that are not very challenging, but then I imagine in other aspects of their life, they blow up and they have temper tantrums, or they're the boss. They're maybe even cruel to some people at their workplace, and that makes them feel powerful. So what I'm trying to say is, I think there's a healthy venue. There should be a place where you can do this in a healthy way. You should be able to challenge your parents. Why not? Have a healthy debate. Your friends, even your superiors. I think teachers can be very belittling sometimes because they're in a powerful position and they tell you not to question their authority. I think that's BS. Like, as long as it's done respectfully, I think that's good. So that's kind of what I meant, is like a healthy, there is aggression in all of us. To have a healthy place where you can have competition and aggression, and you're not punching people, it's contact, it's physical contact. There's an intimacy, oddly enough, in that. And we need that. I don't think people should be in a bubble their whole lives. I think that makes us closed off to the human connection.
I'm with you on that. And I think that's such a good point, that because you can be, because that you have the strength, because that you have that spectrum of emotional expression, you can also modulate when it's appropriate to use it and when it's not. I've seen you doing that, and I have experiences in my life as well that I'm, by any means, I don't want to shout at anybody, but I know that I can. And
yeah.
In certain situations when I know that I'm right about something and somebody is just opposing me for the sake of it, it is very healthy for me to just firmly stand my ground.
Totally.
With the ability that if you want to escalate it, I'm not standing down because I know that I'm right about it.
Hell yeah. I'm glad to hear that, because I think one of the biggest, now I'm going to sound like pretentious, or we're going to sound pretentious, but I think one of the biggest lackings of people today is that they haven't had opportunities to know what they're capable of. And that part of their shadow frustrates them, and it leads them to taking shortcuts to feel big. But, and I get that. I've read some books on child psychology. Every child will try and feel big at one point or another, even down to the simplest gesture of taking a toy and saying, it's mine, I'm not going to share that. Or like pushing a kid away. That's a natural thing. They will do it. Get away, it's my toy. But people become adults that still act that way. And I think if you never get the chance, if you're the kid who had the toy stolen and you never get the chance to reconcile that, you'll be passive aggressively bullying other people when you're an adult. And you will blow up at them when it's not right, because you can, and you feel good about that. And it's silly. And I still have work to do, because up until recently, like I sort of got road rage, and I feel really bad about, I never got out of my car or anything, but like I would blow up screaming profanities at random people on the road. And then thankfully I'm at a point where I can go, but bro, you got some work to do on yourself, because that's a random person that you're manifesting and channeling some dark spiteful energy at. Why? You know, most people won't even think that it feels good in the moment. That's people think why. I do it because it feels good and I need that release. But why do you need that release? So, you know, through things like you know, adult things, which I think could be taught to kids, like just a bit of mindfulness, meditation. I've tried to take it back to the root cause and not let things build up. And I realized that it was my vices and addictions that were causing me to feel justified in outbursts and explosions. So if I drink, you know, I don't drink that much these days, but if I have a few drinks, I feel more justified in expressing my righteousness. Okay, I've realized that. So then be careful when I drink. Don't drink too much, because and if I do, just keep my mouth shut. What else? Like, if I am spending my day wasting time, procrastinating, not getting stuff done, and then my wife comes home and she's saying, oh, you know, it's your turn to do dinner. Can you do dinner tonight? Oh, you know, babe, like, oh, okay, I'll get to it. Why am I getting irritated? Oh, it's not my wife nagging me. It's that I didn't spend my day well. So I'm annoyed with myself. And this cycle of self-recycling and self-dialogue is so lacking in people today, I think. They always want to the buck stops with, well, I'm right, and nobody better tell me, and they're never going to tell themselves. So it's a shame, because people build up their walls, and it's very hard to penetrate, and they don't want it to be penetrated, and they think they're strong, and they think they're resolute, and they know best, and actually all they're doing is being kind of narcissistic, I think.
How did you develop your self-dialogue? Or what do you do now to keep up that self-dialogue?
I feel pretty lucky in a lot of ways. So this goes into an interesting tangent about some ex-friends. And, you know, we all want our children to have good friends. And my parents were warning me all along, oh, these guys aren't treating you right. And I would stubbornly defend them. No, you know, they're the best. They're my friends. You don't know. You don't get it. Hindsight, right? They were assholes to me, and I thought they were cool, so I put up with it. But by those betrayals, you know, we don't wish to be betrayed. We don't wish for Shakespearean betrayal. But then what a learning to realize that you were justifying people that were bad, and they were wronging you. And when the penny drops and you go, they're not good people, and I don't want them in my life, and you cut them out, finally, as an adult, then you're just alone with yourself. Because I think it's only natural and human, unless you're super introverted, it's only natural to take bits and pieces of your environment that you like and form yourself with them. Okay, these people are cool. I want to be like them. I'm going to try to model myself after them. I was the funny guy. I'm going to be the clown, the class clown, the jester for their court. And if I amuse them, I have value. And I'm witty, and, you know, and it makes me happy, because when they laugh, I laugh. We get in a little circle of laughter. And who cares if they've let me down countless ways? Like, those moments are great. I think we tell ourselves this in romantic relationships too. It's worth it for those nice moments that are high highs, and who cares about the low lows? So to circle back, through that cycle of cutting out that toxicity, I then became alone with myself and experienced a bit of a period of loneliness and isolation. But then you start to find better people that are just trying to be good friends and kind to you. And then you start to think, I want to be kind to myself. This is not for everyone, but one of my biggest fears was always to be alone, and I'm a bit needy. So to be alone was sad for me. I didn't ever want to be alone. And I did what I needed to not be alone. But I think everyone needs to learn how to be alone with themselves. And every child needs to learn that when you're alone with yourself, my wife's way better at me than this. that's when you're actually your true self. If when you're alone, you're needing to give into addiction and vices. Because I experienced a period in California, we were long distance, and every night was some little mild inebriation, like a little drink, a little smoke. I was alternating it, like nothing excessive, but I felt like this is how I'm alone with myself, by a little bit of relaxing and what's the word? Not satiating, but like, what's the word? Stimulants and depressants. Like I was just trying to create an easy, relaxing experience for myself because I couldn't be with myself alone. So I would escape that through dreams and through mild substance abuse. But when you can be alone with yourself without the need for anything, I think that's also, sorry I'm rambling here, but such a huge lesson. For you need to be able to be alone with yourself without needing anything, any stimulant or any depressant, unless you really medically need it. Because then, if you can be productive without those things, you're a whole person. You are a sustainable person. And then you can choose freely and responsibly to enjoy things without doing it because you're afraid of your inner dialogue. And so once I finally matured enough to do that, I started having an inner dialogue with myself, and I started saying and believing that it was better and healthier for myself to not need any external thing, whether it's friends, whether it's a substance. And I started talking to myself, and it's really stupid and dumb, but I've always talked to myself and I just didn't realize. But I do it more playfully, like I'm joking, I'm making jokes to myself, I'm singing to myself. So why not have a constructive, philosophical, metaphysical dialogue with myself? And that's one of the most beautiful things I think that I've discovered. And not everyone gets to discover that or wants to, but I think everybody should. And I probably discovered it around the same time you did. So I think we're possibly late bloomers in what should be the case, but early bloomers for the majority of the world.
That's true. I've experienced a version of it when I felt alone in company because I was surrounded by those people that were just not good for me. And those were the times when my substance abuse was the heaviest because I couldn't be with myself. I couldn't be with other people. And it was just this, I felt locked inside myself. So I wanted to escape this reality completely.
Yeah.
You mentioned child psychology books. Do you have any books that really impacted the way you look at yourself or children or the world?
Books are such an interesting thing because, I mean, I wish I was more of a reader, and I hope to become. It's one of those maturity things I'm trying to work on because I am an addict of technology. But
I listen to audiobooks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, me too. One of the audiobooks I listened to was, I think it's called like Mom Psychology or something. It's my wife and I both listened to it on, this like what happens to the female body when you get pregnant, which is a pretty insane thing. It's almost like an alien taking over your, like the host. So for me to understand that was important for hopefully what she's going to go through. And then I've read some books on like some controversial books. I think, what's his name? Peterson. I can look it up real quick. Jordan Peterson, I think.
Oh, hang on. Your sound cut out.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There you go.
I was trying to minimize. I hit it. He's a controversial guy, but what I like about him is he tells it like it is. I don't think he's wildly offensive, but I can see how some people would find him a bit extreme. But like the chapters that stick out to me are when he says like, don't let your kid become a tyrant, so there needs to be a discipline. He says like, you should be able to, just with the look that you give your kid, they should know that it's time to settle down or there will be consequences. And I mean, that sounds almost like a dictator, but the point of that is that you're tasked with raising little people. And if your friends come over and these little people are, I don't know, just running around like screaming profanities, like breaking things, just making inappropriate jokes and comments. I don't know. It's, that's on you. Like they're just wild savages that you've let sort of go free. And it's a weird image that it conjures up. But so the point of that being is that, like, until they become of age where they can be adults, there is a need for discipline to help them self-govern. I think. I agree with him on that point. But then he contrasts it by saying, don't stop your kids from skateboarding. I had a skateboarding phase. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing. Not everyone can relate to skateboarding, but the message, I think, is clear. I had a phase of skateboarding. You're going around pretending to be a punk. You're riding on the streets, feel like you own the city. You think you're such a badass. The point is, you're being a little rebel, a tiny rebel. And you got your backwards hat, whatever. You don't listen to the authority, and you're carrying around in school, and the teachers say take your hat off, and you go, why? Why? What's the point? The point is, you do need to rebel, because otherwise you're going to become complacent. So raise your kids with an understanding that you are providing them with a privileged roof over their heads and a meal in their mouth and safety, but then give them the freedom to go out and be independent and explore for themselves. The child psychology. So there's some other books too that are more masculine based. So like Iron John and Magician Warrior King. I don't remember the exact titles, but and I've taken less from these books because they're sort of about traditional upbringing of men. But one thing that sticks out to me is this story. I think it's the story of Iron John. I can't go into it with too much specificity, but there's this guy that gets captured. I think it's Iron John is his name. I hope I'm not butchering this. And he's this hairy wild man, reminds me of myself. And he's captured by the king and put in a cage. And the child of the king, the prince, sees this man, and the king tells him that is a bad man. He belongs in prison. So we're basically telling our kids, especially our boys, don't be wild savages. Like, you can't just go off and be crazy and kill people and hunt and be a monster. But the kid is fascinated, so he goes up to the Iron John, and Iron John, he goes up in the night, sneaks up, and he wants to know. And Iron John says, "Go and fetch me a hair from your mother's lock, a lock of hair, and I will take you out of the kingdom with me." And of course the kid is like, "This sounds awesome." So he goes, sneaks into the bedroom, tries to get the mother's lock of hair. And all this stuff is metaphoric about, losing innocence and stealing from the mother what she's given to us and trying to become men. Every kid wants to grow up too fast. And then you realize, fuck, I miss childhood. I wish I could be a kid again. And I think women mature faster than men, but boys especially want to become men as soon, like they just see manhood and they think it's so cool. So I think we've lost initiations in our society, and there used to be initiations for men and women, and now they sort of happen whenever the heck the local school kids think they should happen, through hazing and bullying and inappropriate stuff. And it goes back to me saying we should educate our kids to be prepared for that, and we should help them through their rites of passage. And I think there are healthy ways to do that through sports, through like incremental independence as they get older and more conscious of the world around them. Sorry again, long answer.
No, I love long answers. You don't have to apologize. Did you have any form of initiation, whether that was a specific event or whether that was a gradual development?
not through my parents, and that's one of the things I think could be changed. Largely, like I said, through the machinations of the kids around me that were, most cases, slightly older. I mean, like I said, I was introduced to sexuality, pornography, that kind of thing through other boys that had got it through other boys that were older than me, and you know, they thought they were doing me a great kindness to, you know, show this amazing thing to me, and you know, you're discovering yourself and your body, and you know, you start seeing things that you don't understand, but it feels good. So you think, well, give me more of that, you know, you're cool, you're great, thank you. But actually and you know, and another whatever experimentation of other forms and other kinds, those initiations happen largely without the parents knowing. And I mean, in a way, you know, you can't really help your child initiate sexuality as a parent. But I think you can at least give them the information and the tools to be aware and make the decisions. I think it's incredibly sad, like when people get pregnant, for instance, too young, because they are not prepared to deal with that. So I think you have a responsibility to try and keep them out of those situations until they're mature enough, because otherwise they're minors and you have to help, or in some cases make the decision for them, and nobody wants that. So other initiations, again, came through sports. I was able to come out of my shell, and I was fortunate to get a growth spurt, and you know, I think I was the first kid that had hair, a little happy trail hair on his chest. And these initiations happen in the locker room, you know, the unisex, you know, the men's locker room, for instance, and probably in the women's locker room, I would assume. You know, oh, look at that, he's got some hair on his chest. Oh, you're the man, you know. Oh, I'm the man. All right. But then, you know, getting made fun of later in life for having a fully hairy chest when it's no longer, most men don't have hair. So, oh, you know, whatever, you know, little things, and other initiations through these ex-friends, entering into my first band, you know, which was like a tribal thing to be in a band. I was obsessed. I loved it. I put so much time, effort, and energy, only to be betrayed and cut out, excommunicated from this band by my friends who I thought would have prioritized our friendship over this stupid ass band. Replaced. You know, it's like that betrayal messed me up, but it made me hungry for acceptance elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, and then of course romantically, ironically, my first kiss was a girl like of my sister's kissing me, and it's a running joke. I never let her forget it. And that was a magical thing. My sister's friend running up and kissing me, like before she went off to like leave the country. I don't know, just like left me with this precious gift of like, you are somehow special, attractive, cute. I don't know. Just like she wanted to kiss me, she kissed me. And then she planted this seed that forever I thought, wow, that's a nice thing. I want to kiss more girls. and little things like that. And then you know, then you go through the next stages of, as they're stupidly referred to, the bases of progressing in your romance, sexuality, and you ask your first girl out on a date, you know, you get nervous. Like, I remember this was healthy. I loved that my mom, it was really sweet. She dropped me off at another girl's house, the first girl I had a crush on, so that I could go give a little Valentine's Day chocolate and a teddy bear. And their parents opened the door. Hello, young man. Would you like to see Nicole? You know, and then I gave her the gift, and it was super innocent. There was no expectation of a kiss, and I was leaving the country on that occasion. But that little experience created a foundation for me to continue to try and respect women. And if the next woman I pursued, I think listen to this story, and I'll shut up. Same innocent romance. You know, I bought her a little necklace with my own money, just a little heart necklace, and I mustered up the courage, called her. Hi there, Mrs. Dwyer. Could I speak to your daughter? Who is this? Young man, you're far too young to be dating. Do not call this household again. And I didn't. And that girl stayed very, very prude. Maybe that's not the best word. Stayed very sheltered and very under strict lock and keep while she was under that roof. What happened the minute she gets to uni? Whew! She ran through as many people as she could. And when I met her again, ironically, later in life, the tables had turned. And what did she want? The innocence of me. And what did I miss? The innocence that she had lost. And even though this is a funny story, we reconnected and had physical connection, and she wanted to take my virginity. And I said, no, thank you. You're not the person that I was interested in. But I know I didn't really say that to her. I just said, no, thank you. I'm not feeling it. And she respected that choice. I wasn't consenting. And I just think back and say, you failed your daughter. The same lesson you guys taught me. You overprotected her. Okay, great. In the grand scheme, she didn't get pregnant into your household. But she became unhealthily curious. And then I think she had to go and just experience as much as she could. And all you had to do was maybe just weigh out the situation and healthily help her have these little initiations. Oh, you sound like a sweet boy. All right, well, I'm going to stay on the line, but you can chat to my daughter or whatever. But so that's just my opinion. That's my 2 cents.
I get it. The gradual initiations and introductions to stages of life, instead of having the feeling that you missed out on so much and now you're trying to really catch up. And yeah, it kicks you out of line with your own timeline.
For sure. Definitely.
Being someone who likes fictional stories as much as I do, sometimes when you don't get, that was my story, that I definitely didn't get the good modeling from my own 2 parents. So I was looking towards culture and entertainment and films for any form of modeling. And I'm not saying that I got a good model, but those were my original role models.
I think a lot of us do that.
Do you have any positive modeling experiences, like any good fictional characters of a good parent or a good parent-child relationship that you would recommend as an accessible cultural touch point?
Interesting question. Not so much, actually. And this is part of the reason that I love the films you're working on, and it's part of the messages I'm trying to promote in my films. Not so directly as with your upcoming project, but just by showing healthy households, or at least trying to educate of what those role models can and should look like. But honestly, I mean, you have these sort of whatever sitcom, there was a whole genre of like family TV in the States, like kind of silly stuff that's been like parodied now or whatever, but like Full House and, Family Matters was a good one. And now it's like Modern Family and stuff like that, which is fine. I don't relate as much to it because it's a different generation, but even when I watch those, it was all very made up to me. Even though I could relate to some of it, I guess. Like, yeah, we're all in a house. Maybe we eat together. We do things together. But those things were all just trying to entertain you, right? With little quirky, goofy stories. and yeah, there was always some emotional bits, and I didn't like that format. I still don't like that format, and I think it's very hard. So it's a great challenge that you're pursuing. It's very hard to show realistic models based on all of the context that we have in our film experience. We have only extreme examples that are entertaining, but actually the best models aren't that entertaining. They're just wise, and they're patient, and they're caring, and they're giving, and they're generous. And those don't make very exciting characters, but they make the best parents. The ones that are stable and not wild and show up. I'm just trying to, I mean, I could name a bunch of movies where I found it interesting, like the parental roles, but most of the time there was an issue with one of the parents or both, and that's what created a more interesting main character, which is kind of true in the sense that I think some of the best artists have had childhoods or hardships that then they share something really fascinating because of their experiences. And I would never wish that for myself or anyone else. I even though I think maybe I'm less interesting in some ways because I have had an easier time, but it's not worth it. Like, I don't think it's worth somebody. When I talk to my students, I'm a tutor, and I listen to students, and they cry, and I hear them out. And my advice is to channel it into some art, but that's only retroactive. Really, it shouldn't have happened in the first place, that they had to go through that. And, heavy stuff, heavy, abusive stuff that no matter how much work you do to fix it, it never should have happened. It never should have been allowed. And it's messed up. And I mean, that's my compass too, is that even though I have a very dark side, I could never justify doing something to someone else's life for myself that they had no control over. It's just not cosmically fair. Like, no matter how much it would satisfy me. And so, where am I going with that? I just think, I think parents need to always put the child first. And if you're not willing to do that, don't become a parent. I lost my train of thought, but that's the main through line, I guess.
I get you. And I love that. It is a very fine line. I wanted to say that with the Jordan Peterson stuff as well, that it is a very fine line. I'm going to circle back to that with books, the tricky thing is that the reader is always going to read in their own voice. So you're always going to hear your own translation of what the text is saying.
Totally.
Because if you just read the line that you as the parent should be able to signal it to the child with a look that it's time to stop now, that doesn't mean it's a threatening look. It's a very healthy relationship, and you're just signaling that you're going too far now. And with control, that I've experienced childhood as and definitely not physically, but definitely an emotionally imprisoning experience, because I felt like I'm lacking control. And that can be, in many forms, just the simple forms that some kids just don't enjoy going to school or doing what they were told to do. So it's a sense of you have very little control over your own life or your own day. And I want to believe that there is a healthy balance between giving kids enough freedom and enough time and enough space to use their imagination and express their personalities. But at the same time, they do need those boundaries. So it's very nuanced how to create an environment where they can grow safely, and at the same time, they are not growing like weed.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. And, again, I sounds naive, but like you see other parents and you go, oh, well, I won't be like that. But then you're going to have bad days and you're going to be stressed, and the kid is going to annoy you, right? Like, I mean, the perfect place we all hope to get to is that you can just laugh at everything, and everything is an experience, and that takes a lot of work to be that mindful and present and willing to see everything in life as a happy accident, as effed up as it gets. You got to be a very monastic person. So because the easy times, the fun times, who cares? Like, we can all go to a movie, go to the amusement park, go to, wherever, go out to dinner and have a good time. But when you're having a bad time and you're stressed and something's, and the kid has no clue, it doesn't realize why you're stressed as an adult. And they're not giving you any empathy because they haven't even learned that yet. Shut up, you stupid kid. You see parents ignoring the kid, and you think, oh, they're kind of cruel. But it's like, there may be, I don't know this yet, there may be appropriate times. Okay, I give my kid a lot of attention, but if I give it to them all 100%, I'm never going to have any time for myself. I need to establish that, okay, now is a period where we're going to spend some time together and give each other attention, and now is a period where dad needs to work, or that whole thing, which I'm going to struggle with, because I want to, idealistically, I want to be the parent who's like spending the most time with their kid, but that can get unhealthy too. And we've explored some of those things in the constellation and stuff, and I hope that my wife and I can balance that. And I agree with you. Yeah, it's like a healthy growing plant, not a weed, but also not an invasive thing that's just taking over your life. I mean, we're not trying to sacrifice our own independence completely by becoming parents. There's a balance to be struck.
Absolutely. Do you feel like emotionally your parents were involving you in their life? Because that's something that was never modeled to me as a kid. And when I lived in a household with children, I observed for the first time that children from a very young age can be involved in the tougher emotional challenges of parents. And that was something very bizarrely new to me. Were your parents like honest about their hardships, or just honest about when they're sad or fearful, or?
Yes and no. Again, I'm very lucky because I had two fully functioning adult humans that, for the most part, put us first, and were just had very little, if any, vices. And I mean, they're just the kind of people that you make you believe that you can become a fully functioning adult too, because they are doing it. And so they didn't talk that much about their emotions, but largely because I think that they weren't necessarily depressed much, because they did talk to each other, and they had a supportive family. They talked to their family a lot. They had friends. So maybe they felt like, we don't need to talk to our kids, not like trouble them with our own problems, but just, we're going to talk as adults about our family challenges. And, we don't need the kids to know about or be involved in those decisions. And I think, let them be kids, and, let them enjoy their childhood, which is very big of them. But then they would explain things like, okay, well, why are we moving to Singapore? I have all my friends here. It's heartbreaking. Well, this is a tough thing about life. Sometimes you need to start new, and no, I don't want to. Well, you're going to have to just trust us and see, because a new experience can be different, and it can be better. And it ended up that it was. But at the time, no, like, we hated them, and we hated it. The other times is they would just show us. I mean, my mom, when her father passed away, she completely went into a shell, and she was in bed for days, wouldn't leave, poor thing. I'm probably going to be like that, I'm almost certain. And I would come over and, hey, Mom, what's everything okay? What's the matter? And she just, like, with barely any energy, she'd just say, like, I'm okay, Brandon. I just leave me here. I just need to be alone right now. And, and I would walk out, and, hey, life's great. Not my problem. And I would say to my dad, oh, what's wrong with Mom? Stupid little shit, And he would say, well, she lost her father, and, how would you feel if you lost one of us? And I just still couldn't compute it. And I just thought, stupid little kid. I said, no, she shouldn't be so sad. It doesn't do any good for her to be sad. Slap this little kid. I was just an idiot. I will be just like that or worse. And I hope I've been so blessed that I haven't had these hardships at a young age when I'm less able to process them. It's gonna destroy my whole world. And the last few lessons that my mom mainly tries to teach me is to not let it destroy you. Other people need you now. You can cope with it, and it's gonna happen one day. And again, I'm very fucking lucky that it hasn't happened, and most people have lost someone close to them by this point. Almost everybody has. So I've been extremely rarely lucky, and I thank God. I say my blessings and my prayers every day for my gratitude for that. And there's nothing more important to me in this life than the safety of my loved ones.
Do you have any plans for how to teach your children empathy, or how to involve, or do you want to involve them in your emotional life, or do you want to expose them to the depth of the emotional spectrum?
I think I will. And it was kind of reinforced by the family constellation. I think I will try and be as upfront as I can be with them. I mean, it doesn't mean sharing my every thought, like, oh, my grandpa was a great grandfather, and he was a little bit, he would let us know, and we'd be watching TV, and he'd make a little. We all found it funny, and it was pretty innocent. But he'd go, oh, we'd be watching Wheel of Fortune, and he'd say, oh, does she come with the car? Or he'd go, oh, well, she's cute. She's, he would, and I didn't think much of it. This is the guy who had the Playboys stashed under his bed that I would go sneak a peek at. And my dad, because he snuck a peek at them when he was a kid, he thought, oh, well, that's boys being boys kind of thing. My point being, like, I wouldn't share those kind of comments with my kids, because even though I might be thinking them, I think there's a level of, like I said to you, like, sometimes white lies are a good social tool. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be brutally honest, about I'm not brutally honest with my wife, with people, partners, about, oh, do you like this? Do you like that? Or now that being said, my mom did straight up say to me, you're getting fat, and you keep eating those donuts, you're going to become a little pudgy kid. And she said, if you're okay with that, keep on eating. I was looking at the donut, I'm like, okay. But I think that is a good level of honesty about the right things for healthy choices. But let's say I'm going through something hard and difficult and complex. Yeah, I might try to explain, I'm feeling this way because of that. And then maybe try to make it more relatable to what they're, to give them something to compare it to. But another thing that I'm blessed about is I never witnessed my parents, and nobody wants to witness this, in any kind of sexual acts. You almost think stupidly, you think, oh, they don't do that, not my parents. But they were good about keeping it to themselves, because I also don't think it's fine if kids are seeing that on movies, but I think it could be quite weird if you see your parents doing that. Not that you should hide that you do it, but witnessing that is I think adults should be free to be carnal and to feel everything they want to feel, but kids will not know how to process that. So I think you have to withhold some things, and you have to build up, like I said, foundations and layers of information so that they can process it with the level of maturity that they're at. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Oh, I don't even have closing words. I just want to say I every single time we talk about this, I feel like I'm growing and gaining something, and your
Right
friendship
on.
is such a huge thing for me, and I'm so looking forward to seeing you with your kids and being the
Oh,
honorary auntie.
yo, totally, totally. Please. And like I said, I mean, again, it should be said, I know that you don't physically want kids, but I think that you are a very inspiring person that is a mentor to people, and perhaps giving not just maternal, but like a paternal, maternal role model figure for people like myself and others. And I think that we need more people like that in society. So it's not just about blood, physical parenting. I think we all need role models, and so just keep up the good work, Alex. You're on the great right path, and thanks for including me. And it was a pleasure talking as always. Thanks for
Yeah,
listening.
absolutely. Then one last question then.
All right.
If you could pick one role model, who would that be?
Well, there's this story when I was a kid. It's gonna sound cheesy now after all I've said, but like we had that assignment, and everybody's choosing sports stars and astronauts and celebrities. I chose my dad, and that's how I want to be. And my mother, I would have, if it wasn't just a single person, I would have chosen both. Because I just think that they are not selfish people, and they'll say they're selfish, but it's hard to meet. I have hardly ever met better people, who put others first, who, even though they've got their weaknesses and there are points where they are not perfect and they lose it. And my mom, borderline. I mean, don't talk politics with my mom. You don't want to go there. And my dad, sometimes he just doesn't want to be told what to do, because fair enough, he's lived this life twice as long as I have. But when but they both, because this is the last thing I'll leave you with, I think is really cool, is that the best parents would and should also be the beneficiaries of their children's learnings later in life. So I feel not like I don't feel an obligation necessarily. I don't feel a privilege. I feel excited that they still are willing to listen to me now, that I have some things that I can share with them because they've taught me so well. And I think that is the most beautiful circle of life, is that they're not set in their ways to the point where I do still talk politics with my mom, and I will tell my dad things that I think he could do. And every now and then they'll listen, and we find a common ground, and they continue to grow, which is fucking cool, because most parents stop growing. Most old people stop growing, and they get set in their ways, and it's no fun. And most people will say, I don't even want to talk about that with them because they'll never change. But I don't feel that way about my parents. I could talk to them about anything, and they still teach me things, and I still teach them things. So they're my total role models forever.
I'm so happy to hear that, especially as an adult as well, because we see a better rounded picture of our parents, but especially as a kid, instead of choosing a parasocial relationship with a star or a sports person that you've never met, you never had any real contact with, choosing the people that you live with day in, day out, that's a testament to a healthy relationship.
I couldn't agree more. And I think those are the little rewards for being a good parent. Like, nobody told me to do that. In fact, when I think back about it, it's a little bit of my people pleasing, but I think that will make them feel special, like they've made me feel special if I choose them. And yeah, like, so it wasn't completely unconscious. Like, this effing celebrity is not going to know I chose them as my role model, but my parents will know. And I want, and even at that young age, I thought, like, I want to reinforce that they are special to me, and I don't take them for granted, I guess. And I still don't. I never will. And yeah, thank you for this interview. It was lovely to chat about them and parenthood, and I hope I can live up to them. And I'm looking forward to the journey ahead.
Thank you. I had such a good time, and thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate that.
Me too. Me too. Always a pleasure, Alex. I hope it helps in your greater mission and project here. Keep me posted on the progress.